Hey, Royce. Great to have you on the show today.
Hi, Andy. You all right?
Very well. What a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean, I love our conversations every couple of weeks, Royce. I think this is all going to come out in today's episode. We do some really great work together, been working together for a long, long time. And I'm really excited to bring you on the show because I just think you're a really, really great example and will be a really great inspiration for a lot of people building their own property businesses. So I don't want to give too much away just yet. We've got lots to cover in today's episode. I've got a really great plan and lots of stuff I want to talk to you about. But Royce, I know lots about you, but for our listeners that perhaps aren't quite as in tune with you and what you're doing, can you give us a bit of a background? Where are you? What are you doing? And what does your property business look like?
Yeah, sure. So, yes, I'm Royce. I run a property business with my wife, Ella. So that firstly in itself is quite an interesting challenge from the start. And we've been doing that together successfully since around about, I would say we started taking things seriously around about 2014. We did have a buy-to-let prior to that, but that was more what I would consider like an accidental landlord situation where we had a flat, we lived in it, we moved out of the flat. We rented the flat out and we bought a house basically. So that was our first one. And I suppose that was like kind of our first little taste of, oh, this is interesting. We can have something here that's paying us a monthly amount of money. And then you kind of do some calculations. You're like, oh, how many of these do I need? Could we get to X amount? And that would pay X money. But I want to say that was around about sort of 2007, 8, 9. So it was kind of when the world was going disastrously wrong financially. So I didn't really take too much notice of it. It just kind of sat there in the background. And my background is sort of corporate world, I suppose. I was never fantastic at school. I was all right. I got my head down. I was plainly average. I got through and got out alive, is how I see it. And I never really knew what to do. So kind of bundled around, tried a bit of, not university, but did a H&D. So neither here nor there. And then I just went into work. I just wanted to work and earn some money, to be honest with you. And I found it more interesting than the sort of more studious side of things, learning about things that I probably wasn't that interested in. So yeah, that's kind of where it all started. And then I had a life of just going from one job to the next. Like I say, very much corporate. I'd stay with companies for sort of 3 or 4 years. Then I'd move on to another one. Again, I've just got my head down and I grafted within organizations and I worked my way up. But along that journey, it quickly became apparent to me, and this is kind of where the property stuff started to bubble in my brain. So through that period, I was working very hard. I was doing very long hours. I was driving out the house early. I was coming back late, and it did begin to wear on me a little bit. And I did start to think, is this what life is all about?
I mean, I don't think that is a unique feeling at all. That I resonate very, very strongly with that. Talked about it a lot on the show. You know all this. As a physio, it was great, fun at first. I had fun. I had lots of great colleagues. And I kind of still miss elements of it, but it certainly wasn't fulfilling. And I started to find that it wasn't even challenging, which was the bit that really scared me. I thought, how can I do this for the next 30, 40 years or whatever it might be and not really feel like I'm being pushed and challenged? And that kind of story, that kind of way into property, I've heard so many times on the show. I mean, at what point, Royce, did you really start to take it seriously, like the idea of actually building a business and as opposed to maybe, because that is what you do now. We're going to come on to what things look like now, but you're not just a landlord. You're certainly not just a portfolio landlord. You are very much a business owner. Your business happens to be property. But when did that shift start to happen?
Yeah, so like I say, around about 2014, a few triggers went off around the world of work. I saw some people who I was working with, and I'd got to a really good position. I was earning really good money, and I could, if I was still doing it now, I'd be earning really, really good money, but I'd still be doing what I was doing before, which is not what I wanted. And a few things just triggered around me. I was like, the money, it was great, but then I looked around at the people who I was working with, and unless they were the sort of fresh new ones who'd come in and dead enthusiastic, some of the ones that had been there for 20, 30, 40 years, they just weren't happy. So it really sort of triggered me in that sense. And I spoke to Ella about it. Now, Ella had a background in estate agency. So Ella had been an estate agent, and I'd always found it very interesting, property and sort of finance and mortgages. It was something that, I don't know, I just gravitated towards it. I'd looked at shares and stuff like that, never really got it, but I could get property. It was a real thing and it was a real asset. And Ella had come from that world. Ella had just started. It was just not long after EPCs had come in through HIPS. I think it was the HIPS. The original sort of, I think the Conservatives brought in once where you had to do a big energy pack, which has now gone away, but the EPCs survived it. So Ella was kind of had connections in that world. And we basically sat down and we said, right, because I was actually paying the mortgage off as quickly as I could, because interest rates at that time were very low. So I was like, right, let's just pay this off in a few years' time. And then when I looked at the property that we got and I looked at the mortgage, and I don't know what it was, something dawned on me that all I was doing is beating an interest rate of something like 0.5%, which is almost what my mortgage was. It was something crazy. And if I actually took that money and started investing in something else, I could actually earn a lot more. So I was actually not really winning in that sense. So great, you're paying your mortgage off, but what happens then? You still carry on working because you still got to earn money and nothing's paying you from an asset. So we just sort of unsophisticatedly, I suppose, we then started to take remortgage out of our existing house. So I'd done the opposite. I put all the money into it and then we took the money out and we just started buying. We started very simple, very cautiously, just bought property and rented it straight out. Okay, this works. A year later, bought a property, did a lick of paint. Oh, this still, so did a little bit more. This still works. And then a year later, so saving up the money and going again. And we just grew into slightly bigger projects, really. You know, it went then on to replacing the kitchen and a bathroom, and so on. So we grew a steady portfolio from sort of 2014, I would say, up to about 2018-ish. And then at that point, I was really frustrated in work. And obviously, when you've grown a portfolio, it does suddenly take its toll. We had kids come into the world, and there's a lot coming from a lot of different angles. And it was like, something needs to happen here because I definitely can't keep doing this.
And so that takes us, that's 2014 up to 2018. And obviously a lot of experience there, starting to build your portfolio, which became obviously the foundation of your business. And I think you said there that almost, perhaps without the same intention that you have now, obviously something needed to change, but it doesn't sound like in those earlier years that you had a really well-formed strategy and quite knew what you really wanted it to become. And I would say that working with you now, that's very different. You are very clear on what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you want this to become. And then, of course, how you're doing it. And we spent a lot of time. I mean, we started working together. You've been on my program now since August 2024. So you started to work with me and you had a lot of experience. And I think that might surprise a lot of people. And I would say that you're not actually unique in that sense. I work with a lot of people quite similar to yourself, Royce, and with that kind of experience. And there's almost a point that I find that people get to, they're doing well, but then that same sort of that toll and that burden, and those sort of wrinkles and those struggles really start to set in. There's almost a ceiling. Get to a point, and it forces you to start thinking, what are we actually doing here? How do we want to run this business? Because a portfolio of of buy-to-lets can become quite a challenge, can't it? So take us back to now, about 18 months or so ago, when you sort of first inquired about working with me. I mean, what was the business looking like? And what was it that you were starting to feel like was the challenge? Was it operational challenges? Was it the fact that you didn't quite have the clarity on your strategy? What was it that at that point made you take some slightly different action to bring about some different results?
Yeah, a bit of everything really, from what you mentioned there. So from 2018 to when we met 18 months ago, I did a couple of mentorships with other mentors. So they opened doors to me that I didn't know. And again, that suddenly resonated to me to say, look, you need to do this because there's a lot of stuff that you don't know. So we were very much traditionally just buying stuff, sitting on it, hoping it goes up in value and remortgaging it. As you take the money out, go to the next one. Very slow. So I think we got up to, I want to say, sort of 8 properties or so, all single buy-to-lets. And then from, I want to say, 2018 up to when I met yourself, we grew that to around sort of 20 properties, mainly single tenancy buy-to-lets. But some of the strategies that we were being told were kind of direct to vendor, which does work, by the way, all great stuff and everything. But what we found was happening is with direct to vendor, as great as it is, you don't tend to buy what you want. You tend to get what you're given, if that makes sense. You can't necessarily pick a strategy. You can't say, do you know what? I really like HMOs, so I'm going to go direct to vendor and buy HMOs. Yes, there are ways you can mitigate and get through it, but we were just bombing out the marketing, a lot of information, and we were just getting motivated vendors back to us. And a motivated vendor could be in a flat, they could be in a castle, they could be in anything. So we just found we were getting a lot of stuff. Whilst it was good and it kind of pushed us forward and it opened a lot of, we did a lot of mindset around that time, which was great. So we grew a lot. But I suppose the frustration was, and I learned systems and I learned all these. So it's starting to sort of, germinate a little bit within me. But again, we just kind of got a little bit fed up with it, I suppose, is what I would say. Like, we weren't doing what it didn't feel fun and passionate. If that, it was great. We were growing the property business. You look from the outside in, these people are flying. They must be really happy and everything outside. But under the skin, it was like, this is hard work. And it wasn't that enjoyable, if that makes sense. It was just tough. So we looked at our portfolio because we'd managed to pick up a few HMOs in the direct vendors stuff. And that's when I was like, you know what? I actually really do quite like HMOs. We started off with what you would call a mini mo, so just a 4-bed to test it out because we're all very cautious. So we tried that one and we were like, do you know what? It's not too bad. This is all right. Then we did a 5-bed HMO and we're like, do you know what? This is all right. And then a 6-bed. On each one, we improved it a little bit. So with the 6-bed, we had one then with a sort of a studio. So it had a kitchenette in it and everything else like. And it was really proud. Like when we'd done it and renovated it, we looked at it and we were really proud of the end product. And that's when me and Ella, we sat down and we were like, we both like this. We both like finding somewhere that's kind of a bit of a wreck, has potential. We can create rooms out of it, but really nice rooms is what that's the direction we want to go in. We don't want to go in just the bedrooms with, shared bathrooms here, there and everywhere because we've got them and we know what happens with them and all the challenges. But the really nice premium ones, we were just proud of them and we got good tenants, we got good rents. Still has challenges, don't get me wrong. So that's kind of what drove me towards connecting with yourself, if that makes sense. I didn't know how to do it. I was kind of stuck. I was like, that's what I want to do, but I don't know how to I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, I recall it was sort of almost putting the parts together. You sort of knew the bits that were missing. It was a bit stop-starty because finance was sort of coming in from refinances and then you were trying to plan the next one, but it was trying to align everything and waiting till the money was kind of in before maybe going to find the next deal. And similarly with deals, because the money wasn't necessarily always there, it was a bit stop-starty with deals. And of course, you as the business owner, you were kind of all over everything in the business, the management, the tenants, the properties, the refurbs, finding the deals, all of the admin, trying to find extra money. And I'm pretty sure everybody listening right now is kind of nodding along thinking, that's kind of me. We've all been there. And that's often part of the growing process. But what was really clear to me was that you'd kind of done a lot of this, not necessarily accidentally, but you'd done this, without too much thought and too much strategy. And you had all the qualities. You were super lendable, really easy to see, straight away. Plenty of, track record, sort of, an experience, in property, but also from the corporate world that you had sort of to offer, and really open-minded as well. And I think that was important. You were quite honest and didn't quite know how to turn all of this into what you wanted, and perhaps weren't even quite sure what you wanted to turn it into, maybe not even possibly not quite confident in what you might be able to achieve yourself, Royce, despite actually doing some really great stuff. You weren't quite sure or kind of willing to believe that actually you could turn this into something pretty mega. And I love the strategy calls that I do with everyone, and I recall ours in particular, but I think we just sort of blew the lid off it straight away and actually started talking about, well, really, it's kind of entirely up to you what you want to do here. How far do you want to take this? What sort of business? And we spent a lot of time on this, didn't we? What type of business? What do you want this to look and function and feel like? Because you obviously had the different buy-to-lets and different things in different locations. And we talked a lot, didn't we, about how do you want this to behave in the future? What do you actually want for your life? One thing about you, and you share a lot of picture of the really incredible holidays that you guys go on as a family.
Yes.
It's lovely to see. And, you were just away in Thailand. You're always away, in fact, and you've always got a tan. So anyone who goes and follows you after today's episode will absolutely see it. But it's great. And clearly, you prioritize that stuff in life, opportunities and experiences with the kids and with Ella, and you're big into your training as well and your fitness.
Yep.
You've got, I would say your priorities absolutely right. I very much resonate with that sort of stuff, but building that business to make sure that it didn't conflict with that in the future, because that's the challenge, isn't it? You start to build and expand your business and you add layers of complexity and it can very quickly become something that you don't want it to become. So, let's talk about a few different things. I want to talk about finance because there's a few things that I feel like you just swung the bat and you just hit it out of the park. And I've seen this a number of times and it's really interesting. I've got my own theories as to why some people are able to do this more so than others, but almost always, in my opinion, it kind of boils down to just one's ability to actually just go out and execute and just do the really simple things, but do them well and do them continuously. But finance, that was one of them. I want to talk about that. Deals and putting the right deals in place and being quite clever and creative with them. And then also the way that you built and installed an operating system into the business, because you were getting quite busy when we were working together. That ramped up a lot. And very quickly, it was clear to see that if we didn't do something, you were going to be the single biggest bottleneck in your business. So let's start with finance, Royce. I mean, just from your perspective, in the last sort of 12, 18 months, what has changed for you in terms of your ability to maybe access finance, use finance, the amount of finance that you're getting access to? Just give us a sort of a quick summary about how that element has changed in your business.
Massively. It's been, I would say, probably not the one single, but, certainly one of the most important things that has changed in the business, which has allowed us to go forward and start doing the projects that we want to do it. And I'd always kind of known that finance was going to unlock the door, but never really knew how to go around it, but wasn't really doing it. That makes sense. So what I found very obviously useful from yourself, because obviously I followed you and I see your content and things like that. So I started to kind of engage with it as well and thinking, I should be doing a bit more of this. And obviously then when we started talking, you were fairly, not brutal, but you didn't mind telling me that I'd maybe should be doing a little bit more on my socials, which for me, that really works. I need some accountability, because if I'm coming onto a call with Andy this Thursday and I've not put out a couple of social media posts, I know Andy's going to be asking me about this. So I will make sure that I get some posts out that week. So so in terms of finance, it kind of looped around a little bit, that did. But yes, finance has made a massive difference to what we can do. But that has come through from really, just organic, me, Facebook and LinkedIn, me just telling the world what I'm doing.
Yeah, so
nothing more.
And I was really hoping that you would say this, because to me, it was so obvious. You were sitting there in front of me. We discussed what you wanted to achieve. We put that plan together and then looked at the ingredients that we needed. And actually, you had so many of the qualities and attributes that you need to successfully go and do this, but you just weren't telling anybody. Nobody knew about it. That was a funny thing. Actually, it was really obvious to me that, well, this is what you want and need. How many people have you told about it, and how many people have you asked? And the answer was pretty much nobody. So
none.
Really simple, but we just started there. And I mean, that in itself has been transformative. Every time we sit down, you come back and say, oh, one of my mates, from down, this was literally a conversation we had just last week. One of my mates from down the pub, and you've got these really sort of long-standing relationships. You've got so much trust and goodwill that you've rightly earned from people in so many different ways over the years. And actually, you now recognize that you've got a great opportunity for other people as well. And I think that, just framing this slightly differently, having the confidence to say, well, actually, this is what I do. I am a property investor. This is our business. This is how we work with people. And then seeing that is a great opportunity for other people who've got a lot of cash that you've obviously learned very quickly. There's a lot of money around that they can work with you and get a fantastic return as well. And it really hasn't been, I would say, particularly difficult for you to do this at all.
No, not at all. Other than just making sure that I'm just telling the world what I'm doing. And that's a mixture of just everything. Like, it could be the holidays, it could be the refurb that we're doing, it could be the planning meeting we've got to go to, it could be the tenants that have wrecked the house, just a bit of everything really.
Yeah.
And just pushing it out there. And then you're right, sort of the people started to come out of the woodworm a little bit, and they would then start to get in touch with me. We'd go and have a coffee with them. They'd ask some questions that, what they're doing, that they might have had an interest in property, but they're really busy in their life. They've got tons of things going on, but they've saved up some money. They've maybe had some properties, sold some properties. They've got, money there. And a lot of them had more money than I thought they would have. I never thought they'd have that much money. But yeah, and with some of them, they would start on a smaller amount. And if there's one thing that we always do, and again, I will sit in front of the investors and I will reassure them about this, no matter what happens, they are getting paid, on their terms. When they want the money in, just make sure that you set the right terms that you can manage yourself. Don't overpromise anything. And I think just having that upfront, honest conversation with them, and it's genuine. It is genuine. Like you say, it wins for us and it wins for them. They just need the confidence to go, yeah, my money is safe with you as people. And once you've done it and proven what you can do and proven how it works, suddenly then they say, oh, do you know what? I've got a little bit more money. And you're like, oh gosh, wow, here we go. Let's go find another house.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me on to the second, big thing that we've worked on, which is deals. Quite literally, you've ended up with access to more finance and more people who want to lend you money than you were actually able to cater for. And then that itself becomes the challenge, and that stop-start nature has to be dealt with. And again, I think that you swung the bat at this. We identified this problem, we put various solutions and actions in place, you swung the bat and absolutely, hit it out of the park. And I think what's really interesting about your strategy, Royce, is that you're not specifically just HMOs. Actually, I think what we really identified was that you like that creative element. You're all over the construction piece. You like putting the deal together. You're great with people and managing relationships. And actually, your bag was that whole thing. And you didn't want just a big HMO portfolio. We talked a lot about that and what that could look like in the future. Tell us a little bit about just some of the deals that you've done and have done recently.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because even when we first met, I think the first 2 deals I did weren't actually HMOs. I think they were both out of an auction. I remember it was this time last year, actually. One of them was we just identified it as, we've gone out, done all the viewings, we were looking for a certain thing, and we just identified it as a really good value property. It didn't need loads doing to it, and it was just cheap in the auction. Built a relationship with the auctioneer, and he'd said, look, this is really low value, getting zero interest, didn't need much doing to it at all. He's like, I think he said it's valued up at 150. It's on the auction at 100. We literally bought that and we just refinanced it next day. And that is all we did. But we wouldn't have done that without the sort of push of going, right, let's go and start looking. And that was just on an auction. And that was a year ago. So, and that's just a single tenancy buy to let for us. And it's in the portfolio now. It's making, I don't know, £250, £300 a month. And that was that one. And then the next one was again in the auction, and that was in the January. And that had, bizarrely, wasn't marketed very well it was an auction again by the agent. It was a house with a plot next to it, and they were already on separate titles, but it was being sold as one. But the auctioneer hadn't actually done a very good job of making people aware that it came with a plot. So I think a lot of people just thought they were getting the house. And it wasn't until about 3 days before the auction, I kind of questioned the auctioneer to say, this definitely comes with this other plot, doesn't it? And the auctioneer was like, yeah, it does. Oh, I best update that on the website. So like 2 days before the auction, they'd made everyone aware that it came with the plot. So again, it was just getting out there, doing the viewings, analysing things. And that one's turned into a cracker. So that did need a renovation on the house. So that was a 2-bed end terrace house, full renovation, which we did. And we were going to flip that. So we were going to renovate it and sell it. And the plan with the land was always just to get planning permission on it and flip that on. We did the renovation on the house, and we kind of looked at the numbers of the house, what the end value might be. And we ended up refinancing that and keeping it. So that's another one into just a single tenancy buy to let again. So that's in the portfolio, and that's been rented out for 6-7 months. And then the land, we're just in the process of selling now. So we went through, again, all new stuff to me, we've never done planning permission or anything else like that. So I did need a little bit of hand-holding from somebody who has been there and done it, which was nice, because again, would I have the confidence to go and do that all on my own when I've never done it before? Yes, I probably would have done it, but I would have made a damn sight more mistakes than I would have made. And it probably would have cost me more money, and it probably would have taken me longer. But yeah, we're just about to sell that plot of land. So I think we bought that for, say, the house and the land for £95,000. We're in the Midlands, so I don't know whether that's context or not. We spent about 60 on the refurb for the house and refinanced it out about 190. But then we'll sell the land with planning. So we've got the planning permission on the land, gone through that whole process, and we'll probably sell that for about 50. So just a really nice deal that kind of came out of nowhere, really. It wasn't necessarily what we were looking for, but we knew we were capable of doing it with a little bit of help on the side. So yes, you're right. They're not all HMOs. The HMOs came later.
Well, you say later, but not much later. I mean,
not much later, no.
Tell us about the HMOs we're doing now. And one thing I just want to circle back on as well. When it comes to finance, one of the things that we identified was that it was going to be important. If we were going to use more private finance, it was also going to be important to focus on adding value. We talked, you were already doing joint ventures, but one of the things that we identified that you wanted to do was actually not necessarily steer away from joint ventures, but certainly not build your entire business on the basis of joint ventures, which is an easy way to use debt and swap it for equity rather. And it does reduce certain risks, but also you relieve a lot of control. And long term, 10, 20 years, that's very difficult or very different to plan on. And so we talked about, really the preference of building your own portfolio that you control on the most part. But to do that, we were going to have to add a certain amount of value to the project that you were doing to be able to refinance your investors out and keep the whole, keep the music playing, so to speak.
Yes.
And obviously with that, the slightly bigger HMOs, the planning permission, these slightly more creative deals. What I want to highlight as well as your ability to go out and actually raise the finance, it was then to find ways of really engineering that value through the deal. And you've done that through more planning permission, and actually some, I'll let you tell us, but some tricky planning permission, but it looks tricky on the face of it, but actually we didn't think it was tricky technically. And the amount of works and how you handle the works on the projects, and then engineering the valuations. But I mean, just tell us a little bit about a couple of the HMO projects at the minute, Royce.
Yeah, so you're right. It wasn't long after that I want to say maybe March, April. So we picked up our first HMO project, because I think from our conversations, it was very much like, and again, those first two projects were actually a lead into then opening up more finance for later projects, because we'd used original investor for both of those projects. And obviously we'd paid them back, or we're in the process of paying them back. So that was a big tick for them. And then they suddenly said, oh, I've actually got a little bit more, because they quite liked it. It worked. They got the money back and they got the money paid. Obviously, they got the interest and everything else like that. So yeah, it was about April. In fact, I think we were on holiday at the time and it was on an auction. So that's quite a funny story, because we were out there. I think it was the day we arrived. So we'd had a couple of drinks and whatnot. And it was suddenly like, quick, let's get back to the hotel room. This auction's going on. We'd obviously viewed it before and we'd lined it all up, and it was one that we really liked the look of. And I think we definitely we'd bounced it off between us and yourself. I'd shown you the floor plan. I'd shown you like kind of, what do you think? It was a massive area. It had loads of potential. We were looking originally at 6-bed HMO, because it had that, and there was no extension work required at the time when we looked at it. It was there ready to go. You could see from the floor plan and the layout, you could build it into it. But again, with that one, just needed the confidence to know it was going to work. It was in Derby, so it's Article 4. So there's, and that's only just come in as well within the area. It had only recently come in. So for me, there was quite a lot of uncertainty around it. And, if I didn't have somebody there kind of saying, you never said, yeah, it's fine, Royce, just go for it. But, just have someone there to say, well, it's possible, but you've got to do X, Y, and Z. Like, it's not impossible what you're looking to try and do. The floor plan size works. Obviously, speak to an architect. Make sure you check that. The planning area works, providing check X, Y, and Z. These are the areas where you're going to probably face problems and things like that. Make sure you've got a planning consultant on board. And it just gave us the confidence, maybe with a couple of drinks on our holiday on the first day, to go for it. So, yeah, so we won that at auction. And then obviously that then led into the whole saga of planning and all the other kind of stuff, which was an interesting first experience for me.
And I mean, we probably don't have the time to go into all that detail today, but you subsequently bought more, and this is now a process. This is a very rinse and repeat process. What we did, and the way that I like to work to people, is just look very much at the technical sort of possibilities and the technical constraints. And one of the things that you didn't have around you were the people that could appropriately give you the advice that you needed to actually put the confidence in place. I'm pretty good at saying, look, these are the risks, this is the upside, this is the downside. But having somebody else to verify that on a technical basis is really important. And this is one of the things that I often find a little bit of resistance to, because actually spending money on architects from the outset, the project that you just mentioned was a bit more straightforward because it was such a great footprint. But that's not the case with every scheme. Planning consultancy, actually getting that person that can really look at the local planning policy, can really kind of help guide us on, look, these are going to be the challenges. This is how we need to approach it, and make sure that we've got that sort of technical support, because we can sometimes do everything right, but if we just don't frame it in the right way, present it in the right way, that can actually become a problem for us. It can just get rejected by the planning department or certainly the committee. And I think that you kind of took that, you ran with it, you're prepared to invest in the project at that early stage to reduce the risk significantly. We went to planning, got the planning that we've needed. We've done all that. And that's very much just become something that you can rinse and repeat. And it's just a great process and a great method. And that adds that value. It's in the Article 4 direction. So actually that barrier to entry is high, but you've now managed to get over that barrier, which is great. And it puts you in that very sort of small, fairly elite group of people. Not everybody can just come along and do that. You've got that certain amount of protection. And that does a number of things. First of all, you've got the additional cash flow from the bigger HMOs now feeding into your portfolio. That's a nice element of diversification. But you've also got that confidence that you're within the Article 4 direction. There's a great supply of tenants there. That's a great thing for your business and your business model. And it's not likely that you're going to face lots and lots and lots of competition over the coming years, because it is difficult to get over that hurdle. But it's a model that you can now just rinse and repeat alongside these other slightly creative and more opportunistic strategies. And, just reverting back to the auction properties and some of the flips and the things like that you've looked at, what I want to highlight to everybody listening is that actually they play a really important part of the business model. Their role is to enable you to create some capital value that you can crystallize quite easily to then recycle back into projects that you want to hold. You don't necessarily want to hold everything, do you? But you want to hold the stuff that you want to hold. And it's very difficult. And this is just being honest. It's really difficult to create all of the value you need through planning and development to refinance a project and get all of your money out to pay all of your investors. That's a challenge. It can be done, but to do that every time is a really big ask, and it starts to constrain your ability to find enough deals. So it naturally slows you down. And one thing that I talk about and the way that I look at everything is that these three pillars, finance and deals that we've talked about and systems that we'll come on to, there's an algorithm that, if you do all the right stuff in the right way, that algorithm starts to lift you to the top. You get more finance, which gives you the opportunity to do more deals. So you're more active and you're learning more and you've got more confidence, which, hey, guess what? gives you access to more finance and more deals and so on and so forth. And actually, if you're not executing the right stuff in the right way, that algorithm almost works against you. And so you're not doing the deals, so you're not active, so you're not showing yourself, so you're not having the conversations with investors, so you're raising less finance and you're doing less deals. And you've done the complete opposite, but all of these different parts play a really important different role. And I think that for me is what you've done so well. Let's just talk about systems though, Royce, because very quickly there was a lot more going on in your business. And you wanted to make sure that you didn't just become a slave to this. You didn't want another job. That was really important. So what sort of problems were you encountering and what have you done over the last 18 months to resolve some of those challenges?
Yeah, so I guess me and Ella, traditionally, we run the portfolio ourselves. We don't run it through an agent. We manage everything ourselves. So we obviously got quite busy because we'd taken on properties and tenants and HMOs, and we were also then juggling projects as in renovations and planning applications. We just suddenly became ridiculously busy. Felt like a bit of a quiet, early 2024 to the end, and then it just went insane. So I knew there was going to be cracks, and I knew there was going to be strain. We'd done a fairly good job, I think, in systemizing. We moved away from the world of spreadsheets quite a bit before, and we were using some software, which is good. It's kind of customizable. We use it, and it works really well for our business. Doesn't do everything, but it's good. So we kind of taken a step into the systems. I think we've got quite good systems in place. We'd probably grow out of them at some point, but at the moment, it was serving us. The bit where the strain was going to be people for me, and you very quickly identified that. And I knew that, but again, I just didn't quite know the best. Again, you would never say you've got to, do X, Y, and Z, but you would say, right, okay, these are the areas I think you should look into. And then if I go, I'll go down these rabbit holes and I'll go and investigate them and come back and go, right, I think that is definitely the one I want to do. So it was definitely people, because me and Ella wanted to get more heavily invested in the projects and the finance side of things and all of that busyness. Whilst we want to oversee what's going in the portfolio a little bit, we didn't want to be just in it day to day, as you know, with all the little things that come up every single day with a property portfolio. So we went down the VA route, which again was a good introduction for yourself. And we hired a VA, I want to say probably mid last year. And again, that was another game changer for us. It took away, slowly. I think we had conversations where it's a little bit of a one step backwards for a couple of steps forwards, and it is a bit painful. But again, I've tried to be good at systemizing the things as we've gone through the training element of it. So it's not a magic wand from day one. There is a lot of work you need to put into it. But yeah, the VA took away like tons of stuff, like initial phone calls, compliance, as in they're managing the compliance side of things, and it just works. A gas safety comes up, it gets done. We have a dashboard to make sure everything is on top of it, but it gets done in the background, which is great. And we've just slowly introduced more and more work. I think originally they were doing like 5 hours a week. I think that we're up to like sort of pushing on 20, 25 hours now, and we could probably do more as they've picked up more stuff, because now they're kind of onto the actual dealing with the tenants and managing the maintenance and all of that kind of stuff, which has been brilliant. It's just allowed us to go and keep moving forward in the other areas, which I know, sort of drive the business forward.
Yeah, you've done such a great job in doing that. And you're right, there's an investment of time and resource that needs to go into a new team member actually that is working so well for you now. I think I keep pushing you, saying, look, we probably need to get, you go from 25 to 40 hours. And it's amazing. I think when your new staff member and your new team member just started, you didn't think it necessarily need to be much more than 5 or 10 hours. And very quick, it's like, oh, wow, actually, there is so much that we're doing that somebody else can actually do. And this is such an important part. I really want people listening to today's episode that are in that position where they've got a lot of stuff going on. Maybe they've got a job, busy family life, they're doing some property stuff. There is just a lot of stuff going on. If you're trying to be all over everything at the same time, your attention and your first priority just isn't going to be raising finance and doing deals and putting the systems, the operations and the processes in place. You're not going to be installing that operating system. And if you're not doing that, then that algorithm is just going to work against you. So having the foresight and just almost the faith and the belief to invest in that process. Let's be honest, that is what you had to do, Royce, wasn't it? Put a bit of money on the table, say, look, actually, we've done some more deals. It's great. We'd love to just take more out of the business, but actually, there's a point at which we've got to take a step back, put this person and these processes in place, invest in that. That'll then give us the scope to go and do substantially more, which is exactly what you're doing now. I mean, your business, 18 months on from where we started now, is so different. And one thing that I would say that if I was going to underline what things look like for you now, it's just momentum. You are moving so fast. We're continuously talking about more money, another deal, and the bottleneck, which is you, and we need more support, more processes and more systems. And that is exactly where everybody should aspire to be. Once you're there, things are going really well. It'll be hard for a period of time, but if you persist and you do execute on the right things, that is precisely how you build serious businesses that actually do let you go and take time away and go and do the holidays that you want and take the family and the kids and have all those sorts of experiences, train and exercise, just have all of that freedom and choice, which you absolutely do. And you do a great job, in my opinion, of keeping all of that in check. You're never on a call feeling super stressed. You'll say, it's been busy and I can see this coming up, but you're not getting on a call. You don't look like you look like you've had a full night's sleep. Which I jest, but actually, at this stage of the business, it could be so much more difficult without putting this sort of stuff in place. So it's so great to see you making this sort of progress with so much momentum. I mean, just for a bit of context and a bit of perspective, Royce, you've obviously invested in things like training, support, guidance, and mentorship over the years before. And I wonder whether that's come from your corporate background as well. But I mean, how fundamental do you think that type of thing has been to your ability to grow a business? I've talked quite openly about this and my experiences on the show before and how instrumental it's been. But, from your experience, just stepping back a little bit, how valuable and how important has this kind of role of support been in your business, generally speaking?
Yeah, it's so important. I think if you look back at like the growth that we'd done from the early days from 2014 to sort of 2017 and how many properties we'd added and how we were doing it, if I hadn't gone into the world of, mentorship training and finding out a little bit more, then, I'd still be doing really well, I'm sure. But I don't think I'm pretty damn sure I wouldn't be enjoying life as much as I am, just as you were sort of talking about all the crazy things we're doing at the moment and how busy we are. It's really enjoyable. That's the thing. We're really enjoying it at the moment. This is probably the most we've enjoyed the journey since we've been doing it, if that makes sense. And it's fun. It's exciting stuff that we're really engaged and that we really like. And I think it's not just the training element of it, do X, Y, and Z. For me, massively accountability helps me a huge amount. Just for me, just a bit of reassurance sometimes, when you're having a bit of a wobble in the sense of, are we doing the right thing here? Or, or can you just tell me where I need to look? Because I feel like there could be something bad coming around the corner. Which corner is it coming around? Just that foresight a little bit. Contacts is a massive one for us. It's accelerated our ability. You can kiss a load of frogs, which we have done in various, unfortunately, builders aren't quite as easy to recommend here, there and everywhere, but it's taken us a long time to get good builders. And I still have a deep down feeling that, that will disappear one day, but we have, touch wood, at the moment, we've got a good builder. But again, it's the same with anything, isn't it? If people can recommend good people to you, that's a huge thing. And it's like a network of people as well and things like that. So, there's so many things. You don't know what you don't know, do you, at the end of the day? And I'm sure I'm sat here and I'm kind of like teasing out at you a little bit in our calls now saying, okay, so after the HMO thing, what's next? And you're
What
like,
next?
well, whoa. It's like, you're a bit busy at the moment, but start doing maybe this, but like, let's not go quite there yet. Do
Well,
you see what I mean? So, yeah.
I think that in itself is just a great piece of perspective to have, isn't it? Because it's really easy to get carried away with the idea of doing something, or maybe we think we're a little bit better or we know a little bit more than we do because we simply don't know. We see someone else doing it, and actually just, working with that person who's got that taste or got that experience can actually say, look, you're capable, but actually think about X, Y, and Z that's happening at the minute. And one thing that I've always found with mentorship and training and coaching is that, as well as having a sort of really critical role in trying to actually maximize all of the effort that is going into your business or yourself, it's also a huge sort of just filter. It's a sense check on some of the things that could be so substantially detrimental to your business, you ultimately never recover from them. If you make a 5 or 6 figure mistake, actually, to get back to the same position, you've got to earn all of that back and then do all the work that you would have otherwise been doing. And that's very, very difficult. And I think the amount of money that we can save, the amount of risk that we can reduce by thinking in the right way and approaching things in the right way, by sometimes just following a bit of experienced guidance is so valuable. Royce, with all of this in mind, if you were starting again now, and there's a lot of people that will be tuning in, listening to today's episode, who I'm sure are feeling really inspired and motivated and encouraged by everything that you're doing. But if you were starting again today, how would you do it differently if you would do it all?
Yes, well, I definitely would do it again because we love property. We're really, like I say,
Well, that's a good start.
Before, we enjoy it. We're enjoying the journey. We're enjoying the ride. We've got eyes on the future. We do have this conversation, and we have this conversation like, do we really want to be doing this in 20 years' time? So, but that's all part of the planning. That's all part of what we're doing. But at the moment, we're loving it. So, yes, we would do it again. What would we do differently, though? If I went back to 2014 when we first started taking it, the first thing I definitely would do, I'm not just saying this because you're on the call, but mentorship was like, it was an accelerator. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the mentorship side of things, it opens up your eyes to things. It opens up doors. It creates opportunities. I even look at some of the finance we've taken on from people that's been opened up through, mentorship and groups and networking and all these things that I would never have known about. And in that environment, you kind of get led down, you get guided down these paths of things like you should be doing more on social media. These are the benefits for it. And guess what? If you do this on social media, you get more finance. So that would have been the next one. It would have been, I would have been asking for finance earlier. I would have been getting finance earlier. I would have been doing the bigger deals earlier and all that kind of, or, when I say earlier, there was a long period of just doing stuff that we could have probably moved on to, but we were being held back by probably experience and finance. And then somewhere along that journey, introducing the team and trying to build a team. I mean, you did mention it earlier. I'm really keen to add sort of more team to us. Again, we really like doing the letting side of things because we like offering a good service. Look, we like having the control of a good service. We've bounced around a little bit on the agent side of things, and I like providing a good service to our tenants, our customers, whatever you want to call them. So we like to have an element and control of it, but again, we'd like to build that internally through ourselves. So I think they'd probably be the main things, but it leads on from that a bit of you don't know what you don't know, and how do you get to know what you don't know? You've got to go and meet people who have done it. And the rest kind of leads on a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's some great advice that you've shared there. And one thing that I want to add, and this isn't something that you could or should change, what I think that you've done so well that actually you haven't given yourself credit for is you've invested so well in all of your personal relationships, your reputation, the things that you've done for other people without asking for anything back, the experience that you've gathered along the way, and the way that you've prioritized actually doing a project, not pushing too far, getting it right, making sure that you feel comfortable and then doing the next thing, because all of that has compounded. And actually, all of that work is, you sit down and have a conversation now and there's no friction there. You want to do a deal, or you want to buy maybe a deal from somebody, or you want to borrow a bit more money. It's so much easier because you've been doing all of that stuff for so long, perhaps without really even intending too. And I think that just investing in those sorts of relationships and people in that way. And it's amazing how fast time really does go. I think back 10, 15 years ago, and I thought it might be a good idea if I build an online community and do all of these things, because I don't have any friends and people that really do any of this property stuff. You know, they're all in the medical world and stuff like that. And it'd probably be quite good if actually I tried to invest and build some relationships. And little did I know that attitude alone would be probably the single most important thing that I ever did. You know, everybody I've really met, you know, and worked with in my network has kind of come at some point from that. So I'd also just encourage everybody, and you were doing it, but everybody to really think about that. And even if you won't necessarily see a direct benefit today, don't worry. You know, you might do in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, who knows? You know, there might be someone there at the end who wants to buy your whole empire off you because of a conversation that you have today. Royce, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I knew this would be a lot of fun. I was looking forward to it. Give us a little teaser. You know, what's in store for 2026 then? What can we expect if we get you back on the show, perhaps, you know, at the end of 2026? What are we hoping to see?
Well, definitely hoping to have these 2 HMOs up and running and rented out. But yeah, so we've got obviously projects underway. We've as we mentioned earlier, one's gone through the planning process, and that is full steam ahead on the renovation, which is great. We can go out to site, we can see stud walls going up, we can see electrics going in. So yeah, get those projects up and running. We've got another one to go through planning and things like that. But in terms of like acquisitions and building and things like that, we want to do some more flips. We're looking at the moment. In fact, today there is an auction on, and we are looking at two properties today. So hopefully at the end of today, we'll have acquired a couple of properties for next year. But again, if the flips don't work, we're happy to sort of keep them. So yeah, a combination of, we love the renovations. We really want to do those. But if a good deal comes up that's not a renovation, we'll do that. So we've spoke about this, but you know, in our world, sort of 6 to 7 deals a year, a mixture of, you know, if we can drop a couple of HMOs in there, brilliant. Other than that, flips, refinance, keep to single tenancies. But again, I just know how this game plays because I've done it for a little bit now. You've got to be careful what you wish for a little bit. So we still have that one eye on, you know, we're growing. So I would love to have somebody on board who's going to take away quite a lot of that operational stuff for us so we can still continue to grow without kind of breaking. And again, you know, give us the freedom and the time while we are growing to be able to still do the holidays and all the exercise and all the other good things at the same time. So that's the plan.
Well, there you go. 6 to 7 deals. We all heard it on the show. So we're all going to collectively hold you to account on that. But that's the power of the algorithm. When we started working together, we were probably doing a couple of deals a year, putting all the stuff in place. And this is without, you know, dipping into any savings. This is without or suddenly, you know, earning lots more money yourself or, you know, just magicking it out of thin air. This is utilizing resources that are, you know, out there that everybody can access. It's taking you from 1 or 2 deals to 6 or 7 deals, which is completely game changing. That over an 18-month period of time, you know, 36 months, whatever it is, that compounding effect is massive. And that, guys, is how you build the sort of business that will completely change your life. Royce, I'm sure there's a lot of people today that want to come and follow your journey. Tell us where they should go. Where's the best place to keep up with you and maybe even reach out if they're interested in investing with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So most of my content will go out through Facebook and LinkedIn. Probably should up my game on the other social media platforms. But yeah, most of the journey that we put out will go on Facebook. If you want to see more of the holidays, probably Facebook as well as the property stuff. But certainly, you know, the property stuff is on LinkedIn. Fortunately, I have quite an unusual name. There's not many Royce Turvilles out there. So if you just associate that with Facebook and LinkedIn, I think it's literally facebook.com Royce Turville, because there isn't another one. And the same on LinkedIn. But yeah, if you Google on the LinkedIn or the Facebook, you can connect with me. Yeah, more than happy to connect and chat about the world of property.
Well, there you go, guys. Royce, thank you for coming on the show. So pleased for you. What you're doing and what you've achieved is really incredible. Super, super excited for 2026 for you. This is going to be a mega year. And thank you for coming on and sharing all of your insights, your advice, your experience, and all of your guidance and wisdom with me and our entire community. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Andy.